The void beyond Pluto's orbit shimmered like disturbed water as reality itself fractured. One by one, jagged obsidian shapes tore through the fabric of space, their arrival silent but for the faint hum of collapsing warp fields. The Zapirian reconnaissance fleet emerged in perfect formation, their knife-edged hulls drinking in the weak sunlight. At the lead, the Silentium's shadow extended its sensor arrays, violet beams lancing across the solar system like probing fingers. Inside the command spire of the lead vessel, High Scout Vrix'tal leaned over the holographic display, his chitinous fingers tracing the pathetic human defenses. A few outdated satellites. A single lunar outpost, no energy shields, no fleet response. His mandibles twitched in amusement as the tactical display confirmed what he already knew. This was a backwater system, barely worth the fuel to scout. By the Hive Mother's grace, Kesix, his second in command, hissed from the sensor station. This is the species the Vorak warned us about. Their defenses wouldn't stop a mining drone. Vrix'tal exhaled through his thoracic vents, the sound a dismissive rasp. The Vorak grows soft. They let superstition cloud their judgment. He zoomed in on the third planet, Earth, its blue-green surface dotted with primitive city lights. Look at them. No orbital fortifications, no fleet presence. They haven't even unified under a single banner. Kesix's antennae flicked in agreement. Scans show their weapons are chemical-based, no plasma signatures, no antimatter containment fields. A derisive click echoed from his thorax. They still use projectiles. Vrix'tal straightened, his carapace gleaming under the command spire's dim light. Record everything. The High Council will want proof of how feeble these humans truly are. He gestured to the navigation array. Take us closer. Let's see if they even notice our presence. The Silentium's shadow glided forward, its escort ships fanning out in a standard reconnaissance pattern. The other vessels, Dusk Razor and Veil of Midnight, moved to flanking positions. Their own sensors sweeping the system. Nothing challenged them. No hails, no defensive maneuvers, just silence. Unbelievable, Kesix muttered, watching the tactical feed. They haven't even activated their early warning grid. Are they blind? Vrix'tal didn't answer. His attention was fixed on the sensor readouts. Something was off. The lack of response was too perfect, too convenient. The Vorak were many things, brutal, expansionist, relentless. But they were not fools. If they feared this species, there had to be a reason. Run a deep scan, he ordered abruptly. Look for stealth signatures, cloaked vessels, anything. Kesix scoffed. With respect, High Scout, their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly hide from? The alert klaxon cut him off. A single pulsing warning flashed across the tactical display. Vrix'tal's ventral plates tightened as he read the data. Gravimetric distortions. Dozens of them. No, hundreds ringing the inner system. Then the human satellites moved. What the Zapirians had dismissed as derelict orbital debris unfolded like blooming flowers, their surfaces splitting apart to reveal gleaming barrels the length of warships, railgun arrays, kinetic kill platforms. And they were all locking onto the Silentium's shadow. Kesix's mandibles gaped. Impossible. Those weren't on our scans. Vrix'tal's claws dug into the command console. Evasive maneuvers now, too late. A voice crackled over the comms, deep and calm and utterly human. Zapirian vessels. This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Space Navy. You are in violation of sovereign Terran space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Kesix whirled toward the sensor feed. Where is that transmission coming from? Therese, nothing on scopes. The answer came in a flare of light, off their starboard flank. Space itself seemed to ripple, like heat haze over desert sands. Then the USN Defiance materialized, its matte, black hull swallowing the starlight. It was massive, bigger than any Zapirian cruiser, and its prow bristled with weapons even Vrix'tal didn't recognize. Vrix'tal's thoracic vents clamped shut. The humans hadn't been unprepared. They'd been waiting. Captain Blake's voice came again, laced with something darkly amused. You just broke into a locked house, boys. Hope you like surprises. Every targeting laser on the Defiance lit up at once, painting the Silentium's shadow in a web of crimson death. Keswick's voice was barely a whisper. Hi, Scout. What do we do? Vrix'tal could only stare at the monstrous human vessel now blocking their retreat. For the first time in his long career, the Zapirian High Scout felt something alien curl through his thorax. The Zapirian fleet glided through the silent void, their obsidian hulls drinking in the faint starlight. Vrix'tal lounged in his command throne, his four-fingered hands tapping idly against the armrests. The bridge hummed with the quiet confidence of predators who'd found easy prey. Still no response from their lunar outpost, Keswick reported, her antennae twitching in amusement. Their sensors must be as primitive as their ships. Vrix'tal's mandibles clicked in agreement. Send the data to High Command. Mark this system for immediate harvest once the Vorak finish their border skirmishes. A junior scout at the navigation console suddenly stiffened. Commander, the human satellites. What about them? Vrix'tal snapped. They're moving. Across the solar system, dormant orbital platforms shuddered to life. Panels slid back to reveal rows of massive barrels that spun up with a whine audible, even through vacuum. The Zapirian fleet's threat sensors screamed to life a second too late. Evasive maneuvers. Vrix'tal roared as the first railgun rounds tore through his formation. A frigate exploded into molten debris, its shields offering no more resistance than wet parchment. Keswick's claws scrambled across her console. We're being painted by everything. Weapons signatures from Mars orbit, Jupiter's moons, even the asteroid belt. Vrix'tal's carapace flushed dark with shock. Return fire, target those platforms. Zapirian plasma cannons lanced out, only for the beams to dissipate harmlessly against suddenly active energy shields. The platforms they'd dismissed as outdated relics now glowed with defensive matrices far beyond Federation technology. Then space rippled off their starboard flank. The USN Defiance emerged from stealth like a nightmare, made real, its kilometer-long hull absorbing all light. Its matte black surface showed no running lights, no markings, just the cold, brutal efficiency of a predator that had been watching them the whole time. A human voice crackled over every Zapirian comm channel. Attention, unidentified vessels, you've entered restricted space without authorization. The voice carried the calm of a man discussing the weather. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Vrix'tal's claws dug into his throne. Identify yourself. Captain Ryan Blake, United Earth Stellar Navy, and you're trespassing. Keswick's console lit up with new warnings. Commander, their weapons, I see them. Vrix'tal hissed. The Defiance's spinal, mounted cannon was charging, its emitter glowing an ominous blue. Blake's voice turned icy. You've got 10 seconds to comply before we demonstrate why the Vorak never came back here. Vrix'tal made his decision. All ships concentrate fire on that vessel. The Defiance fired first. A tungsten round the size of a ground vehicle punched through Silentium's Shadow's forward shields like they weren't there. The impact sent shockwaves through the deck as entire sections decompressed. Alarms wailed as Atmo vented into the void. Shields at Faye, Keswick screamed. Hull breaches on decks 7 through. Another impact. Another. The Defiance wasn't just firing its main gun. Dozens of smaller railguns joined the barrage, hammering the Zapirian flagship with relentless precision. Vrix'tal watched in horror as his tactical display updated. Human drones, small, fast, and impossibly agile, were swarming his fleet. They weaved through point defense fire with movements no organic pilot could match. I controlled, Keswick breathed. Vrix'tal realized, they're learning. Even as he spoke, the drones adapted, their evasion patterns shifting to counter each new Zapirian tactic. A new voice cut through the chaos, younger, female, dripping with sarcasm. Hey tinheads, catch. The Zapirian sensors barely registered the missile swarm before they struck. Not plasma, not antimatter, simple kinetic kill vehicles moving at. Basie Silentium's shadow lurched as entire sections vaporized under the impacts. On the Defiance's bridge, Lieutenant Chen grinned as her salvo connected. "That is for Pluto, you bastards." Blake didn't smile. "Marine teams, prepare to board. I want their command staff alive." He leaned forward, watching the Zapirian fleet scramble. "Let's show them why you never kick a hornet's nest." The first boarding pods launched just as the Defiance's main gun finished cycling. Vrix'tal had exactly 3 seconds to realize his mistake before the weapon fired again, this time aimed at his engines. The last thing he heard before the impact was Kessix's terrified realization. They weren't hiding, they were waiting for us. Then the world went white. The Silentium's shadow shuddered as the first railgun round punched through its forward shields. Vrix'tal's claws scrambled across the command console, his chitinous plates vibrating with the impact. The tactical display flared crimson, human projectiles moving at speeds his targeting AI couldn't track. Evasive maneuvers. He screeched, but the helmsman was already dead, his thorax impaled by a shard of exploding console. Outside the viewport, the USN Defiance loomed like a nightmare given form. Its matte black hull absorbed starlight, making it a jagged silhouette against the void. Secondary batteries swiveled with mechanical precision, locking onto the next Zapirian vessel. Kessix's mandibles clicked in frantic denial. "They're weapons. They're not plasma. What kind of savages use kinetic munitions?" Another impact, the deck plates buckled. Alarms wailed as atmosphere vented through a gash in the bulkhead. Vrix'tal watched in horror as the human drones approached. Small, agile, moving in patterns no living pilot could replicate. They weaved through point, defense fire like insects, dodging raindrops. "I piloted," gasped a sensor officer, her antennae trembling. "They're all piloted." A drone latched onto the Shadow's hull. Its drill, bit nose spun to life, chewing through armor like soft fruit. Inside the Defiance's CIC, Captain Ryan Blake watched the carnage unfold on holographic displays. His XO commander Hale smirked as the Zapirian shields collapsed under the third railgun salvo. They really thought we'd just let them waltz into Sol? Blake didn't smile. "Open a channel, all frequencies." When his voice boomed across the Zapirian fleet, it carried the weight of a predator toying with prey. "Zapirian vessels, this is your only warning. Power down your drives and prepare to be boarded. Resist and well scrap your ships for parts." On the Shadow's bridge, Vrix'tal snarled. "Return fire, target there the Defiance's spinal." Mounted coilgun discharged. A tungsten slug the size of a ground car crossed the distance in a blink. The Zapirian cruiser Dusk Razor vanished in a flash of light, its midsection vaporized. Kessix stumbled back from the tactical display. One shot, they killed the Razor with one shot. Vrix'tal's claws dug into his command throne. This wasn't war. This was butchery. Human vessels weren't elegant like Federation ships. No shimmering shields, no graceful plasma arcs. They were brutal, angular things, built to end fights, not prolong them. "Recall all fighters," he barked. "Fall back to the rally point, too late." The Defiance's drone swarm descended on the Zapirian interceptors. Human machines moved with eerie coordination, herding the alien craft into kill zones. Explosions peppered the void as drone, fired missiles found their marks. On the Shadow's lower decks, a squad of Zapirian Marines braced for boarding. Their plasma rifles hummed, mandibles twitching in anticipation. The breaching charge detonated with a deafening crump. Before the smoke cleared, black armored figures poured through the hole. Human Marines. They moved wrong, too fast, too fluid. Powered armor amplified their strength, turning each soldier into a whirlwind of death. A Zapirian fired. A plasma bolt ricocheted off a Marine's pauldron. Then the humans were among them. Sergeant Marcus Reaper Koval led the charge, his vibro blade shearing through chitin like wet parchment. His HUD tagged targets faster than the Zapirians could react. "Clear left, Jenkins. Watch that corridor." Private Jenkins didn't answer. He was too busy crushing a Zapirian's thorax with a powered gauntlet. Keswick watched the slaughter via internal feeds. His ventral plates clenched in primal terror. They're not just winning. They're enjoying this. But Vrix'tal finally understood. The lack of shields, the primitive defenses. It wasn't ignorance. It was arrogance. Humans didn't need shields when they killed you before you could fire back. A Marine's helmet cam feed flickered onto the Shadow's main screen. The human stared directly into the lens. Visor polarized to hellish red. "Hey, bugs," growled the Marine. "Welcome to Earth's neighborhood." The feed cut out as the Marine's grenade launcher coughed. The bridge shook. Lights failed. Somewhere, a Zapirian screamed. Vrix'tal made his decision. "Abandon ship, all hands to." The Defiance's final railgun round struck the Shadow's reactor core for a brief, glorious moment. The dying Zapirian ship outshone the sun. Then there was only silence. The last functioning console aboard Silentium's, Shadow spat sparks as Keswick clawed at the controls. His carapace rattled with the vibrations of another railgun impact. The humans weren't just firing, they were herding them, cutting off escape vectors with terrifying precision. "Vrix'tal," Keswick's voice cracked. The engines, a deafening crunch cut him off. The entire ship lurched sideways, artificial gravity flickering. The view screen shattered, revealing the nightmare beyond. A human boarding pod embedded in their hull like a dagger, its outer shell peeling back. Inside, armored figures moved, too fast. Keswick's compound eyes strained to track them. Zapirian vision processed movement in smooth, predictable arcs. These things jerked, changing direction, mid-stride like their bones were liquid. Their armor wasn't sleek Federation plating, but angular slabs of black alloy, scarred and unpolished. One turned its helmet toward him. No visor, just a single horizontal slit glowing red. Contact front. The human's voice was a distorted snarl through external speakers. Plasma fire erupted from the Zapirian defenders. Useless, the humans rolled through it. Their armor smoking but unbroken. One took a direct hit to the chest, stumbled, then kept coming. Keswick's mandibles dropped open. That shot would have vaporized a Vorak shock trooper. The lead human raised its weapon, not a plasma caster. Not a pulse rifle, a crude, kinetic firearm, a gun like something from pre-spaceflight eras. It barked once. Vrix'tal's head exploded. Keswick scrambled backward, his thorax scraping against the deck. The humans advanced, their boots clanging like funeral bells. One paused to yank a Zapirian soldier off its spear. The warrior had managed to stab one through the abdomen. The human glanced at the wound, then snapped the spear's haft off and kept moving. "Mayday, mayday," Keswick screamed into the comms. There inside, the humans are, a gauntleted hand gripped his throat. The human lifted him effortlessly, bringing them face to face, up close. Keswick saw the scratches on its armor. "Names tallies. You're recording this, right?" The human's voice was calm, almost conversational. Keswick's antennae twitched toward the ship's internal sensors. Of course they were. Every Zapirian vessel streamed constantly to the fleet nexus. "Good." The human adjusted his grip. "Make sure they see." The last thing Keswick registered was the hiss of his own emergency beacon activating, and the human's fist closing around it, crushing both the device and his thorax in one motion. 3 light years away. Aboard the Zapirian command carrier Eternal Claw, High Scout Commander Vrix'tal watched the feed with mounting horror. The bridge crew had fallen silent. Even the ever-present hum of the reactor seemed muted. The transmission wasn't clean. It jittered with static, cutting between angles as one by one. The Silentium's Shadow's internal cameras were destroyed, but the audio remained crisp. The humans' voices, the wet cracks of Zapirian exoskeletons breaking. Then, the final clip, a human marine standing amid the carnage, its armor streaked with ichor. It reached up, tore a camera from the wall, and held it close. Attention, Zapirian High Command. The Marine's voice was flat. You sent scouts to measure us for slaughter. Bad move. Behind it, something detonated. The feed whited out for a second. When it cleared, the Marine was still there, untouched. We've been listening to your transmissions for years, studying your tactics, waiting for you to get arrogant. It tilted its helmet. Tell your fleet this. Earth isn't a target. It's a trap, and you just sprung it. The feed died. Vrix'tal's claws dug into his command throne. His second, a young scout named Jixis, made a low, distressed chirp. Commander, their armor, did you see? No energy shielding, just raw materials. Vrix'tal finished. His carapace felt suddenly brittle. They don't use shields because they don't need them. A junior officer whimpered. The Vorak warned us, they said. Quiet. Vrix'tal stood, his tail lashing, but the order lacked conviction. The evidence was undeniable. The humans hadn't hidden their weakness. They'd hidden their strength on the main screen. The last frozen frame of the transmission glowed. The Marine standing amid the ruins of a Zapirian warship, its red eye slit, burning like a star. Jixis swallowed hard. What do we tell the Council? Vrix'tal closed his primary eyes. The truth, that we've just declared war on a species that lets you shoot them, because they know it won't matter. Somewhere in the depths of the ship, a comms officer began broadcasting the footage to the fleet nexus. It would reach the Vorak within hours. The Zapirian scout ships scattered like startled insects, their sleek obsidian hulls twisting in desperate evasion maneuvers. Vrix'tal's remaining vessels burned hard for the system's edge, their warp drives spooling up in panicked bursts of violet energy. Behind them, the USN Atlantica slid through space like a blade unsheathed, its matte black surface drinking in the distant starlight. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood on the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back. The holographic display flickered with the fleeing Zapirian signatures, red markers blinking like wounded prey. Her XO commander Ruiz glanced up from his console. They're hailing us, Admiral, surrender terms. Hayes didn't blink. Open a channel. The main screen flickered to life, revealing Vrix'tal's chitinous face. His mandibles, twitching in what humans had learned, was the Zapirian equivalent of terror. Admiral Hayes, he hissed, his voice translator struggling with the strain. We withdraw. The High Council will hear of this provocation. Hayes leaned forward slightly, her voice calm. You don't get to run after scouting our home for slaughter. Vrix'tal's compound eyes widened. You cannot, we are unarmed. This violates the... Hayes cut him off with a raised hand. You violated the sanctity of Sol the moment you crossed Pluto's orbit with weapons hot. She turned to her tactical officer. Lock spinal mount full charge. Across the Atlantica's hull, magnetic coils hummed to life, their vibration resonating through the deck plates. The Zapirian ship's sensors would be screaming now. Human coil guns didn't just fire projectiles, they fired relativistic kill vehicles. Kessix's voice crackled over the comms from another fleeing ship. Admiral, please, we didn't know. The Vorak never told us. Hayes' smile was ice. The Vorak was smarter than you. She nodded to tactical. Fire. The Atlantica shuddered as its main weapon discharged. Space itself seemed to warp as the tungsten round crossed the distance in a blink. Vrix'tal's ship, the last of the Silentium's Shadow's sister vessels, simply ceased to exist. The round punched through its weakened shields like they weren't there, detonating the antimatter containment in its core. The explosion lit up the void for 500,000 kilometers on the Atlantica's bridge. The crew watched in silence. No cheers, no celebration, just the quiet hum of systems and the faint crackle of debris against their hull. Ruiz exhaled slowly. That is the last of them. Hayes didn't turn from the screen. No, it is not. She tapped a command into her console. The holographic display zoomed out, revealing the broader solar system, and the dozens of hidden human installations now powering up across the Kuiper belt. They thought they were hunting deer. They walked into a wolf's den. A new alert chimed. Communications Officer Park looked up sharply. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from High Command. Directive Omega is active. Hayes' spine straightened. Omega, the contingency for when Earth's location was compromised. The one that hadn't been invoked in 73 years. She turned to face her crew. Set course for the Proxima rally point. Maximum warp. Ruiz frowned. We're not staying to defend Sol. Hayes' smile returned. Colder this time. Sol doesn't need defending anymore. She gestured to the screen where new signatures were emerging from behind Neptune's orbit. Vast, angular shapes sliding out of stealth. The Zapirians just woke the sleeping giant. Now the whole galaxy gets to meet it. The Atlantica's engines flared as it pivoted, leaving the shattered remnants of the Zapirian fleet behind. Ahead, the stars waited, and humanity was done hiding. The Zapirian High Council chamber, a vast dome of shimmering black crystal, erupted into chaos. Holoscreens flickered to life around the circular platform, each displaying the same horrifying footage. Human warships tearing through the last of the Scout fleet with terrifying efficiency. The images were grainy, distorted by emergency transmissions. But the message was clear. High Chancellor Velcro slammed his primary claws against the obsidian podium. Silence. The command echoed through the chamber, but the assembled delegates barely registered it. Their carapaces twitched in agitation, their bioluminescent markings flashing erratic colors of distress. A junior scout officer, her exoskeleton still cracked from an escape pod's rough landing, trembled as she spoke. They let us see their defenses, the outdated satellites, the lone lunar outpost. It was all a facade. The moment we crossed the orbit they call Mars, their entire system woke up. Velcro's mandibles clicked in frustration. Impossible. No species hides their military strength so completely. Our scans, we're decoyed, interrupted Kesix, limping forward on 3 of his 4 legs. His left forelimb was gone, severed by shrapnel during the Silentium's Shadow's destruction. Their stealth technology isn't just for ships. They masked entire shipyards in the asteroid belt, their orbital platforms. Those weren't civilian stations, they were railgun nests. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Vorak ambassador, a hulking figure wrapped in scarred chitin, hadn't moved from his seat at the edge of the platform. Now he let out a low, grating sound, something between a laugh and a growl. You fools. Every eye in the chamber turned toward him. The Vorak were not allies, not truly. They were the reason the Zapirians had scouted Sol in the first place. The Federation's most feared warriors had refused to engage humanity for decades, citing strategic inadvisability. Now, the ambassador's voice carried the weight of bitter vindication. You thought their lack of energy shielding meant they were primitive? The Vorak rose, his massive frame casting a shadow over the nearest delegates. They don't need shields. Their ships are armored in layered composites. Our scanners can't penetrate. Their weapons don't overheat like plasma cannons. They throw solid projectiles at speeds that crack planetary crusts. Velcro's antennae twitched. You knew. Of course we knew, the Vorak snarled. We lost 3 fleets testing their borders a century ago. They didn't even bother chasing the survivors. Just let them limp home with a warning. Stay out. The holoscreens flickered again. New footage, human dreadnoughts, sleek and angular, sliding out of hidden dry docks near Jupiter. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. Keswick's voice was hollow. They weren't hiding because they were weak. They were hiding because they were waiting for someone arrogant enough to attack first. A junior science officer, her voice trembling, called up a new data stream. Chancellor, we're detecting warp signatures, massive ones, from the direction of Sol. The chamber went utterly still. The Vorak ambassador didn't wait for the analysis to finish. He turned toward the exit, his movements deliberate. I suggest you prepare your defenses and your surrender terms. Velcro's claws dug into the podium. You're leaving. The Vorak didn't look back. My people have survived this long by knowing when to walk away. You should have listened. As the chamber doors hissed shut behind him, the holoscreens updated again. The human fleet wasn't just mobilizing, it was advancing. Ship classifications scrolled alongside the images: dreadnought, class, carrier, class, planet breakers. A low-ranking comms officer, his voice barely audible, whispered what everyone was thinking. "Oh stars, we awakened them." The Zapirian High Council chamber fell into stunned silence as the last of the Scout fleet's data streamed across the main holodisplay. The images flickered, human warships moving with terrifying precision, their weapons tearing through advanced shielding like it wasn't even there. The Vorak ambassador, a hulking figure clad in battle, scarred carapace armor, didn't bother hiding his smirk. "Told you," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. High Chancellor Velcro slammed a clawed hand onto the council table, his bioluminescent stripes pulsing red with fury. "This is impossible. Their technology was supposed to be centuries behind ours." The Vorak chuckled, a sound like bones breaking. "That's what they wanted you to think." Before anyone could respond, every screen in the chamber, every display in the Zapirian home system, flickered and changed. A human face appeared, stern and unyielding, the golden eagle insignia of the United Earth Stellar Navy gleaming on his collar. "Admiral Marcus Kane, attention, Zapirian High Command," he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of a coming storm. "You've seen what we can do to your scouts. Now you'll see what we do to those who threaten our home." The feed split. On one side, Earth's blue-green glow. On the other, a map of the Sol system, then lights, hundreds of them, thousands. Hidden shipyards unfolded like blooming flowers between Mars and Jupiter, their construction bays spitting out fresh warships at a rate that made the Zapirian engineers gasp. Orbital platforms, previously dormant, powered up with a synchronized hum that vibrated through the transmission itself. And then the fleets, not just the USN Defiance and Atlantica, but dozens more, their hulls marked with names like Titan's, Wrath, and Oblivion's Edge. Kessex, the only surviving scout officer, whimpered from his medical pod. They were hiding all of this. The Vorak ambassador leaned back, his multiple eyes dark with something no Zapirian had ever seen in his kind before. "Fear, no," they were waiting. Back on the feed, Admiral Kane continued. "You wanted to know where Earth was. Congratulations, you found us." His lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Now here is the part where you learn why the Vorak never came back." The transmission cut to a new image, a massive structure orbiting Pluto, its surface covered in glowing coils. A Zapirian science officer screamed, That's a warp destabilizer. They can collapse jump lanes." Kane's voice returned, colder now. "You thought you were the hunters. You were wrong." The screen flickered again, showing a live feed from the edge of Zapirian space. Human ships, hundreds of them, materialized in perfect formation, their weapons already charged. "This is your only warning," Kane said. "Turn your fleets around, stand down, or we will show you exactly how humanity wages war." The transmission ended. The chamber was silent. High Chancellor Velcro turned to his fleet commanders, his voice barely a whisper. "Recall the invasion force now." The Vorak ambassador stood, his carapace clicking as he moved toward the exit. "Smart choice, for what it's worth." He paused at the door, glancing back. "You're lucky they're feeling merciful today." As the chamber erupted into panicked shouts and frantic orders, the feed from the Sol system remained burned into every screen. Earth's defenses, now fully revealed, glowed like a nest of awakened giants. And somewhere, in the dark between stars, the Vorak began to pray.